Hi, I'm Chris with T&K Off-Road and Overland. Today, we're going to be installing this 2-on-2 VIAIR setup with a bolt-on platform specifically designed for the Jeep JKs. Stay tuned to see how we wire everything up. Here we have all of our components in the VIAIR 2-on-2 bolt-on platform for the Jeep JK. We have our pre-assembled pumps and air tank. We've got a dial, we got extra filter, we got the bolt-on bracket, we got a whole host of harnesses, fuses, fittings, air lines, air block, mounting things, pressure regulators, you name it, we got it. The only thing we don't have are good, clear instructions. There's a 12-step instruction manual over here with a component checklist, and that's about it. So, we're going to show you how to install this bitch. So we'll start here. You'll find this green short stub harness with the round end. This is going to be your pressure sensor. It's off at 200 psi and on at 165 psi, 30 amp rating. It's got green weather sealing on it. Got the round Delphi connector. You'll find this long harness that will have a matching connector to it. You have black wires on this side. This one has two red wires, which I find odd, but they plug in. You'll come down to the end of this harness. You'll see a loop with a red wire. That will probably go to one side of the fuse or the relay over there. The other end has got a spade connector on it. I imagine that will go onto the back of the switch for the fuel or the pressure gauge. So that should take care of figuring out what that does. We'll move on to the compressor jack. So next we will locate two identical spools of wire with a square connector on it. One of them is going to have a male connector like this one, and the other one is going to have a female that matches this side. That way you can only plug them in. What this does is this is wired up for 2 powers. The female side is wired up for 2 grounds. At the compressors, they are wired up. Each connector is power, or ground. So we just go and we make sure that that plugs in. On the other end of this harness, there's going to be one eyelet. Well, it's actually 2 eyelets, but they're heat shrink together. One for ground, one for power. So now that we know which harnesses are for that, we can set those aside. We'll figure that out in a minute. We're going to figure out exactly the orientation of this needs to be on the bracket and the orientation of the bracket in the Jeep. So, let's get to it. So where that air compressor is going to sit, it's going to be right down there. To get that, we're going to have to remove this intake setup here. If you have an aftermarket one, you're going to have to remove that as well. This is a factory one, so I've got one hose clamp, an electrical connector, and then it just snaps out. It's going to be super easy. In the video that VIAIR puts up, they assume that you have some sort of trick aftermarket one that you have to unbolt. We have none of that. Then we're going to be removing this hose for our coolant overflow reservoir and removing that to gain access to the cross member that's below this electrical fan. The electric fan's going to have to come out, which means this is going to have to be loosened. So, stay tuned to see all of that. We have the air box out and the fan out, along with the coolant overflow reservoir. On the fan, you have this upper support that kind of slides in there. It's held on by 4 of these guys. They're a pain in the ass. They always end up looking like that. These are the ones I was able to recover. I was able to snap these 4 off. Now also, what not many people will tell you is there's a similar bracket to this on the bottom side attached to the radiator with 3 of these bad boys in it. Do yourself a favor, get a pair of diagonal cutters, wire cutters, something like that. Use those to get in there and either pull them off or cut them. You're going to be able to push them through the fan. They're easy to get to. Get them out. Go to the Jeep dealership and buy more of these. You can even buy them on Amazon. I imagine they're probably like $10 for a 100 pack of them. These things are all over Jeeps, and they're the devil. Now you can see exactly how much room we're working with here. What I do have down there on that cross member, you'll see right down there, because I have a manual transmission, I don't have transmission cooler lines, but I do have a brake line, and I have a power steering line. Those will either have to be moved or checked for clearance once we install the bracket, which I will now grab. So as you can see, we have the bracket installed. I am nowhere near confident or happy or satisfied with a almost $700 kit that this bracket comes with. You know, in the video you watch on VIAIR, they say just remove the tranny lines. Well, I've got a manual transmission. I don't have tranny cooler lines. And those wouldn't have run down across this cross member anyway, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know that for a fact. I don't have an automatic. But what I do have right here is a power steering line and a brake line. Now, I have called VIAIR. They said they don't know how to install this kit. That gives me a lot to go on. That a company that produces this kit does not know how to install this kit or has ever installed this kit. They said they hired somebody to install this kit. And I said I watched their video, and their video didn't show good enough how to install this bracket. They said I can send you the instructions. I said I have the instructions. It's 12 written steps with no pictures, no further detailed description of what to do about this brake line. Now, I've been working on cars for about 12 years, and I've been doing it professionally for about 10 of those years. And all I know is that you should not be running this brake line directly over a steel bracket. I have installed the bracket with 2 of the clips that you can see here. Here, and here. There still are 2 more U-bolts that I have to install. But as far as I am concerned currently, this is not a satisfactory setup. I have had to modify the brake line. I do have a slight amount of clearance under this brake line over this steel plate, now that I have bent my factory brake line. Nowhere has it been said that I can find of anybody who's installed this kit that you have to modify brake lines or brake line interference may occur. To me, this is very, very shoddy. They should have incorporated a new hold down for the brake line and the power steering line. All it would take was for them to drill a hole in this bracket in 2 places, so you can remove this clip and that clip and move them in here. The fan sits about here. It's not going to interfere from what I can see. I don't know why they didn't do that, but I'm not happy with this. After this part better be 100% fucking stellar. I can go ahead and say that they will not be getting a good review for this bracket design solely. So now we've got that secured. And let's see how our lines interact. Well, there's not much I can do about the power steering line now, is there? It does rub. We'll see if it causes me a problem down the road. I guarantee you there'll probably be a video of me replacing this stupid line. But you'll have to stay tuned for when that happens. It should be fun. So, while we're waiting for the Teflon tape, we're going to take this relay here, and we're going to take the male-ended Delphi connector from the 2-on-2 with the 2 clips or eyelets on it. We're going to hook it on that side. Then, on this other large post here, we're going to take this inline fuse, and we're going to hook this on to the other side here. Now that that's in, you will take your 2 nuts and your 2 crush washers right back over each other and tighten those down. Now here on these little ends, get your adjustable wrench, because that's the kind of guy we are. Then you're going to loosen these guys, just the top nut. The bottom nut can stay in place. So you take the nut off and the crush washer off. Same thing on the other side. And boom. On this one here, you're going to take the short ground wire, put it on. And on the other one, you're going to take the pressure sensor harness, the one that plugs into the pressure sensor, the green thing, and you're going to take this hoop, put it on there. Then put your washers back on, put your nuts back on, and make sure you tighten these up. I'm leaving them loose so while I'm getting it installed into the Jeep, we can make sure the orientation still moves. You don't want to permanently lock anything down, especially without it being installed where you want it. This will go to a ground. If it can reach the battery ground, great. If not, great. You just find a chassis ground. I do recommend going right to the battery ground because it's about the same length as this one here, which does need to go to the battery. This obviously goes to the pressure switch. This here is going to go to the switch on the switch panel. Now we just spoke on this guy's wiring here, and this is almost all of your powers. And like I said, this spade connector that runs to the pressure sensor goes onto this guy here, and then you just run this guy to a switched power. Supposedly that's what turns it on. We'll see. That's what I'm kind of hoping for anyway. Looking here at the feed line, or the line that's going to become our pressure line. One, it's hella tiny. Two, how do I put this gauge into it? I have to go buy more fittings now. That's what I'm seeing here. This is super small line. This is going to take forever to fill up tires. So I'll probably end up having to upgrade this at some point in the future as well, but we'll see how it runs. Now, a nice beef line here, but I'm sure it's not rated for pressure, is our intake line. That's a pretty decently thick line. That will get some air into these compressors, but air in is only as good as air out in a compressor. So the next step to prep this is to install this kit. Now, to be honest, I'm not quite sure how this is going to work too well. This might take two people to bolt down because they couldn't be bothered to weld a nut or put a capture nut in this. You have to, as their video describes, install these rubber grommets into that fitting on the bottom of these compressor here. Then you push this brass bushing into the center of it. That holds it steady. Then you take this bolt, and one side goes up from the bottom, I can assume, or from the top, depending on how you want to go about it, but any which way, it's going to have to be held. Then you've got two washers and what looks like a crush washer. There's no lock on this. What the fuck? There should be a lock nut on this, a nylock, a crush lock. There should be some micro encapsulation. But no, there's not. You're going to need to supply your own blue Loctite. For $700, I expect this to have a lock nut. I would also expect this to either be studded or to have a nut welded into it. I've been noticing that a lot in the off-road industry lately. Let's get to work. So you'll take your compressors, I'm going to lay them up on its side, and it says to just install these. But look how much bigger that is than that hole. So what you're going to need to get is some WD-40. Just a little dab will do you in there. And then, you know, just simply put it in, as the video would state. And it is a huge pain in the ass. So what you'll get is a pocket screwdriver, which I will go get now. I remember how earlier I was saying that they tell you to put a plug in one side and then the other one to put a fitting, and then it's wrong. So what you're going to do is you're going to put all these rubber brackets in with the brass fittings like I just did. And then you're going to test fit this. You're going to go put this in there and you're going to make sure that what you do isn't going to cause any issues. Now, they said make sure you put the compression fitting on the side with the drain valve here. And then they did the exact opposite in the video. Which, one, is not only baffling, but two, inspires so much confidence in their installation at a professional shop. So what I've noticed is once I installed this and all the taking apart, is you're going to follow what their words say, not what their actions do. And you are going to put a block plug in this end here, and then on the other end, with the same fitting, you are going to put the 90-degree compression fitting. The reason for this is because on that side, when it's sitting on the bracket in place, with the electrical connectors facing forward like they are supposed to, towards the engine, I guess backwards would be the right way, you're going to have a coolant reservoir on this side. So that only leaves that side for this. So now we're going to get this Teflon taped up. Same thing with this block plug. And that should seal this up. We'll be able to install this bad boy and get the fan back together. And then we'll go wiring. So now we have our fitting sealed up. We're gonna drop it. Get that in there. Just crank it around and around. And we're gonna want to orient it kind of upward in that direction. Same thing with this. We'll take our block plug, get that installed. Make sure that's nice and sealed. Fix this back up. Now what we're going to do here is unspin that, slide this over that, and then attach that there. Now that should give us a nice tight fitting. Just tighten that down, and it basically is just going to smush that line in place. Now we'll do the same thing with this side over here. Once this is all installed and we can route our line and trim it to appropriate lengths. So let's get this pump installed. So we have the 2-on-2 now mounted to the bracket underneath the fan shroud here. These are a little bit close to the fan. You can rotate them forward and backwards, but you can see we have very little room between this. Also, I've had to slide it all the way towards the passenger side to make the coolant reservoir fit back in, kind of. It still touches. It may melt a hole in it. It might melt it to form. I lost a lot of coolant because I ended up having to take the upper radiator hose off to get the coolant bottle back in. Got the factory air box back in. We ran the ground and power lines up along here, through here, along with the air line. It comes up here. The air line will go up to the valve, which I have put up here. The way they show you to set this valve up is to have the pressure valve, pressure relief valve, plug, air line, 90-degree plug for the input, and then a plug on the end, pressure switch here. I have opted, because I want this right in here, I've put the quick connect right in the center, emergency pressure off to the side, and 90-degree comes in the side with a straight shot over the battery. And then I have the pressure sensor there. Everything wraps up around. I've got the fuse down here, which I will have to find a place to mount it. And then down in there is the relay. It's mounted to the bolt that holds the battery down. As you saw how I set that up earlier on the bench, that's all there. We've ran with the rest of my powers. I've kept all my powers on this side, my coax is on the other side. the two power lines, the one off of this, the connector for the pressure sensor, and then this other return power line down along through the cowl. All my powers have come out here. We will get that zip tied up down there. It goes down beneath this trim panel here, along this cowling here, and then under the carpet we've made an incision, just a little cut, and we have two powers coming out here to the switch panel. They include a switch panel with it with a gauge, which means you're going to have to run that in there. You can see earlier my rant. What we're going to do is we're going to mount this up right there. We're going to pop another hole in this guy, put 2 bolts in there, and we're going to hook the wires up. We're going to call it good. We've already tested it and it runs. So once we get this buttoned up here to the point where we can use the switch, we will add a little clip. As you can see, we have it all running now. The pumps are running. Just clicked off at 200 psi. We got a little bit of leaks here from our fittings, but I've got my coil hose set up, got an air blower. Time to clean up. So here we're doing a test. We're going to air down to 15 psi from 36 psi, and we're going to see how long it takes for that new VIAIR to pump up. Eventually we'll run this against the CO2 setup to see which one is evac quicker. I know which one my money's on. So we've got a full tank of air at 200 psi, tires at 15 psi. We're going to start a timer here. Minute 15 seconds to fill up a 35 12 517 from 15 to 36 psi.